Disgusting Jane completely exposes Diddy. Lawyer threatens Jane in court. Diddy trial day, 19. The courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the gallery, their pens poised. Cameras, though barred, flashed in the minds of onlookers who knew history was unfolding. In the center of it all sat Jane. Once a rising figure in the fashion world, Jane was now the key witness in what some dubbed the most explosive celebrity trial in modern history. The People versus Sean Diddy Combs. She looked steady, composed even. But beneath the surface her hands trembled slightly as she clutched the edge of the witness stand. A single tear threatened to betray her poise, but she swallowed it down. Across from her, Diddy sat motionless, flanked by his high-powered legal team, including attorney Tenny Garagos. His eyes were cold, unreadable, but Jane didn't flinch. Special Prosecutor Kash Patel stood. Known for his unrelenting demeanor and sharp cross-examinations today, he had chosen a quieter approach. "Miss Jane," he began gently, "we understand this isn't easy, but please tell the court, how did this all begin?" Jane closed her eyes briefly, drawing in a slow breath. When she spoke, her voice was low but clear. "It started in 2016. I met him at a party in Miami. He was charming, powerful, the kind of man who could make or break anyone in the room with a single look." She described their early relationship, lavish dinners, private jets, and expensive gifts. But it wasn't long before the dynamic shifted. The court listened rapt as she explained how the affection turned into control. "He would know where I was at all times. If I didn't respond to his messages within 5 minutes, there'd be consequences, not always physical, but emotional, financial. He'd withdraw everything, including access to the apartment he paid for." Judge Karen Walton leaned forward slightly, her expression unreadable. "Miss Jane, are you saying he manipulated your financial stability as a method of control?" "Yes, Your Honor, that was just the beginning." Kash Patel signaled for Exhibit A to be displayed, a timeline of text messages between Jane and Diddy, annotated with GPS pings and financial transactions. "We noticed a pattern," Patel explained. "Moments of silence are always followed by large deposits or extravagant gifts." Jane nodded. "It was his way of pulling me back in, making me feel like I owed him." Then came the shift in tone. Jane recounted how Diddy began hosting exclusive parties gatherings she described as cloaked in secrecy and power plays. He'd invite high-profile guests, musicians, actors, even politicians. And behind the glamour there were rules: no cameras, no phones, and no questions. "Were you ever asked to participate in anything against your will?" Patel asked. Jane hesitated. The room held its breath. "Yes, it wasn't outright forced. It was more insidious. If you said no, you were humiliated, isolated, and sometimes disappeared from his circle completely. And everyone knew. Being exiled by Diddy meant career death." One of the jurors shifted uncomfortably. Judge Walton called for a brief recess. When court resumed, Jane continued. "In 2018, I tried to leave. I told him I was done. That same week, I lost my modeling contract. My agent dropped me. Friends stopped replying. I found out later he made calls, told people I was unstable." Patel asked, "And did he ever provide any monetary settlement during or after your relationship?" "Yes, he paid me monthly $10,000 for over a year. But it came with strings. If I spoke out, the money would stop. He made sure I knew that." The prosecution then introduced recordings from Jane's apartment security system, capturing audio of heated conversations. The court heard snippets, verbal coercion threats disguised as affection requests that hinted at secrecy. One moment stood out, Diddy saying, "You know what happens to people who don't follow the script. I made you. I can unmake you." Murmurs spread through the courtroom. Garagos objected, citing context and tone. Judge Walton overruled. Kash Patel's tone sharpened. "Let the record show that this behavior is consistent with the grooming tactics observed in predatory cases." Jane, regaining her composure, leaned in. "I was scared for a long time, But fear only lasts so long before it turns into something else. Resolve. Patel paused. Is that why you're here today? Jane nodded. Not just for me, for the others. The ones still afraid to speak. The courtroom was silent. From outside, protesters had gathered, some defending Diddy, others supporting survivors. But inside, Jane's testimony had landed with weight. It was the beginning of a trial that would unravel power secrecy and control within the highest echelons of fame. And Jane had just pulled the first thread. The second day of testimony opened with a sharp shift in energy. Jane, composed in a dark blazer and pale scarf, returned to the stand. The air inside the courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Her lawyer adjusted the microphone. Kash Patel sat motionless at the prosecutor's table, eyes trained on Diddy and his legal team. His expression was unreadable, but his posture was alert, calculating. Jane's voice didn't waver. In 2019, I told Mr. Combs I couldn't be a part of it anymore. He said he'd ruin me, that if I opened my mouth, no one would hear me scream. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Teeny Garagos, Diddy's longtime legal counsel, rose from his chair with a tight smirk. Objection. Hearsay. Judge Walton nodded, but before ruling, Kash Patel stood. Your Honor, this line of testimony is corroborated by audio evidence obtained legally under the Patriot Act exception. I request we proceed. A pause. Then a nod. Patel cued a recording. Diddy's voice crackled over the speakers. Calm, chilling. Do you think leaving changes anything? I built this empire. Every door you walk through I paid for. Every deal they offer you I approve. Jane stared at the floor. Her hands gripped the edges of the witness box. She was silenced, Patel said clearly, intimidated into compliance. But today she speaks freely, and that matters. Teeny Garagos launched into cross-examination. You claim Mr. Combs threatened you, and yet months later you appeared with him publicly. How do you explain that? Jane took a breath. You know how long it takes someone to admit they're afraid, to understand they're being controlled. I wasn't with him. I was surviving. Garagos didn't blink. Did you ever receive compensation while you were surviving? Yes, but it wasn't money. It was silent. That answer landed like a thunderclap. Patel stood again. Your Honor, I'd like to introduce supplemental testimony from the FBI Digital Forensics Unit. Approved. An agent stepped forward and opened a secure drive. The lights dimmed as images flicked on-screen receipts, bank transfers, text messages coded with words like refill and retreat. Each one matched Jane's claims. Each thread wove a picture of subtle coercion masked as lifestyle perks. The system wasn't built for people like Jane, Patel said in a calm, firm tone. She didn't have legal advisors. She had threats. She didn't get contracts. She got ultimatums. Garagos attempted to discredit the agent's chain of custody. We have reason to believe this data may have been tampered with. Do you? Patel said, standing. Because my office received this material through a sealed federal warrant. You're welcome to challenge the validity, but I'd caution you against implying the FBI engages in forgery. A moment of stunned silence. Judge Walton turned to Garagos. Do you wish to proceed with that line of argument? Garagos hesitated, then withdrawn. Tensions flared outside the courtroom, too. By now, the media had caught wind of Jane's reappearance and the identity of Kash Patel as the special prosecutor. Protesters rallied outside with signs, "Believe survivors," "Justice for Jane." Who protects the powerful? Back in session, the prosecution introduced another witness, Camila Ortiz, a former house manager in Combs' Miami estate. Her testimony confirmed Jane's. I was paid well, she said, but I saw things I can't unsee. When Jane left the house in tears one night, she asked me, would anyone believe me? I didn't know what to say. As Camilla stepped down, Garagos asked to introduce a counterstatement from Diddy himself. Judge Walton approved. The mogul stood. For the first time, he addressed the courtroom. I have spent my life building opportunities. My success comes from talent and drive, not manipulation." His voice was firm. His lawyers nodded. "I deny these allegations. The people accusing me are doing so out of confusion, resentment, or worse intent to destroy what I've built." Kash Patel did not interrupt. He waited. Only when Diddy returned to his seat did Patel rise. "The court will decide your intent, Mr. Combs, but we'll let the facts speak louder than declarations." With a signal, he introduced a final exhibit for the day, a journal. Jane's. Recovered from a secure storage locker in Los Angeles, it detailed her journey entries, dated from 2015 to 2022. Some passages read like diary musings. Others were raw documentation names, dates, incidents, private locations. When Patel read aloud a section about the circle rituals, elegantly worded but unmistakably disturbing, more than one person in the gallery looked away. She was told Patel narrated that loyalty meant silence, that trust meant endurance, that love meant obedience. He closed the book. Not anymore. Day 2 ended in silence. Even the press pool avoided shouting questions. In the hallway, Jane walked past reporters without a word. Her hand brushed a brass plaque that read, U.S. District Court, Southern District of New York. Outside, the winter sun was low. Protesters were still chanting. But from her glance, it seemed Jane wasn't listening to them. She was listening to her own voice, finally audible. The third day of the trial began under heavy security. New barricades had been erected, and federal marshals checked every press badge twice. Inside the courtroom, a somber intensity hung over the proceedings. The prosecution was ready to escalate. Kash Patel stood before the court, flanked by a new witness, a digital forensic analyst named Dr. Lee Banner. Dr. Banner specialized in metadata tracking and cryptographic signatures. The testimony was direct evidence Jane presented was not only intact, but matched files seized from devices found in Diddy's New York townhouse. "There are timestamps, Doctor," Banner said. "There are IP trails. These were not faked. They lived." Tini Garagos countered with a motion to exclude the metadata as circumstantial, but Judge Walton had seen enough. Motion denied. The prosecution moved fast. Next came a video clip. The room darkened. A projection flickered to life a moment from 2020 at a private party in Turks and Caicos. Jane was there, seated beside Diddy, visibly uncomfortable. The audio was muffled, but a subtitle overlay revealed chilling words. "You're not walking away. You're mine until I say otherwise." The gallery shivered, then a voice from the back. "That's not all." Everyone turned. A new figure stepped into the light, an anonymous whistleblower, known to Patel's office as Orion. His face obscured voice altered. He had agreed to testify under protective measures. He had worked in Diddy's personal security team. "There was a list," Orion said. "We called it the silence ledger. It tracked payoffs. Who was quiet? Who needs reminders?" Judge Walton asked, "Do you have this document?" "Yes. Submitted to Mr. Patel's office this morning." Orion's testimony opened a new chapter. He detailed how certain victims were marked, monitored, sometimes even relocated to ensure silence. He described hidden rooms in estates, off-the-books flights, encrypted communications. These weren't rumors, Orion said. It was a system, a company of fear. Garagos objected, calling the witness unverifiable. But Patel submitted a sworn affidavit from the U.S. Marshals Service, confirming Orion's past employment and the risk he now faced. By midday, the atmosphere in the courtroom had transformed. Reporters whispered about federal RICO charges being prepared. Then came the biggest revelation of the day. Patel introduced Exhibit 9A, a previously unreleased surveillance clip from 2018. The camera faced a vault room at a Beverly Hills compound. The timestamp showed Diddy handing a flash drive to a man in a suit. The man was later identified as a private investigator working for Tini Garagos. Patel's voice remained calm. This flash drive contained files later cited in motions filed by the defense. which means confidential data was passed outside legal protocol, which constitutes obstruction. Garagos turned red. He demanded an immediate recess. Granted. The media outside erupted. Breaking news banners declared, "Defense tied to evidence tampering." During recess, Jane waited in a private room. A counselor sat beside her. "Do you want to continue?" the counselor asked. Jane nodded. "I didn't come this far to stop now." Back in court, Kash Patel returned to the podium. "Your Honor, we will submit a motion to investigate obstruction. But today we rest our interim case with one final statement." He looked at Jane. She was once unheard, then disbelieved, then dismissed. But today she stood, and standing is the first act of justice. The gallery stood with her. Even the judge paused before calling adjournment. As the courtroom emptied, whispers of a possible mistrial swirled. But to Jane, something irreversible had already occurred. The world had tilted, power had shifted, and silence had fractured. The fourth day of the trial dawned grim and overcast. Media trucks packed the courthouse perimeter like vultures, their satellite dishes raised to the clouds. Inside, a sense of anticipation buzzed. The courtroom lights flickered on, and Kash Patel prepared to deepen the prosecution's case. Before court was called to session, a quiet alert passed to Patel from a secure channel. There was a leak inside the police department. An officer had tipped off Diddy about Jane's intention to testify further. The source of the leak was unknown, but the implications were chilling. Judge Walton took the bench. "We will proceed." Kash Patel rose. "Your Honor, the prosecution will present its next witness. Jane Doe will return to the stand." Jane walked forward, wearing a dark blazer. Her posture was steady, her expression unreadable. Teeny Garagos did not look up. Ms. Doe Patel began, "Were you informed of any attempt to intercept or intimidate you during your cooperation with the investigation?" "Yes," Jane replied. "I was told a man posing as law enforcement attempted to contact me through one of my close friends. He claimed to be part of witness protection, but his questions were off." Patel submitted phone transcripts, GPS data, and body cam footage from a federal agent who had intercepted the impersonator. It was a hired actor with forged credentials, paid in cryptocurrency. The money trail led to a dummy LLC traced back to an account flagged by the Treasury Department in a RICO investigation. This impersonator, Patel said, was an attempt to reach Ms. Doe before this trial, and it was meant to silence her. Gasps in the gallery. The judge requested the U.S. Marshals submit an immediate report. Jane continued her testimony, detailing emotional and psychological coercion. She described the aftermath of her relationship with Diddy, not just the physical incidents, but the mental breakdowns, the paranoia, the constant surveillance. "It didn't stop when I walked away," she said. "It followed me. It tried to erase me." Patel handed her a letter. "Is this yours?" Jane nodded. "That's the NDA I signed, under duress. He said if I didn't, the photos would end me." Judge Walton reviewed the document. It bore notary stamps and signatures, but the timeline coincided with dates Jane had already submitted records of hospitalization. "This will be reviewed by federal standards," the judge said. "We will not allow coerced silence to override justice." Then Kash Patel did something unexpected. He called a surprise witness, Officer Nathan Cruz, Internal Affairs. Cruz stepped up in uniform. "I'm here because my department failed to secure its own ranks. We've launched an internal probe into the leak. It appears information regarding this case was accessed by an officer working moonlight security gigs for private clients, including a firm linked to Mr. Combs." A loud murmur rolled through the courtroom. Cruz continued, "That officer is now in custody." The tension was palpable. When court recessed for lunch, news anchors reported the event as a turning point. Hashtags trended. Support poured in for Jane. Returning from recess, Garagos finally stood. "Your Honor," he began, "this is a spectacle. My client is being tried in the court of public opinion." But before he could continue, Kash Patel approached the bench with a USB drive. This, he said, is surveillance footage from a private jet hangar owned by one of Mr. Combs' holding companies. The date is 1 week before this trial. The video shows the impersonator boarding a flight chartered using funds connected to Combs' Shell account. The screen displayed the footage. The man posing as a federal agent boarding a jet alone. Clear timestamp. Matching facial recognition to the same individual arrested days ago, Garagos objected. Unverified digital manipulation, but Patel handed over forensic reports, chain of custody intact. This isn't fiction. Judge Walton nodded. Continue. The rest of the day unraveled more like a thriller than a legal proceeding. A former accountant testified next under immunity. He confirmed that off-book payments, burner phones, and surveillance teams were standard operating procedure in Diddy's inner circle. We called it preemptive management, the accountant said, meaning control the problem before it starts. Documents displayed on screen backed his claims. Entries marked with initials JD and KP included payout logs, rental locations, and media monitoring costs. Kash Patel concluded the day's session with a solemn statement. This case is no longer just about coercion or misconduct. It's about corruption. It's about rot inside systems. And it's about whether truth can survive it. Jane stepped down. As she walked past Garagos, he said nothing, but his eyes followed her, calculating. Outside, the skies finally opened. Rain fell hard on the courthouse steps, but inside, the truth had only begun to pour. As the trial entered its 5th day, the atmosphere surrounding the courtroom took on a sharper intensity. Security had been heightened, with federal marshals stationed at every corner. A small but growing crowd of demonstrators gathered, waving signs that read, "Justice for Jane and End Elite Impunity." Inside, the trial of Sean Diddy Combs continued its relentless march toward revelation. Kash Patel stood adjusting his tie with the precision of a man who knew exactly how to wield truth as a weapon. "Your Honor," he said, "we are prepared to present evidence that challenges not only the integrity of the defense's claims, but exposes a network designed to protect Mr. Combs at all costs." First on the stand was a digital forensic analyst called in to validate the material submitted by Jane and the anonymous informants. Under oath, the analyst meticulously broke down timestamps, GPS metadata, and hash verification protocols. These materials, the analyst explained, have been confirmed as untampered. Their authenticity is beyond reasonable doubt. Patel then introduced Exhibit 74A, a series of internal emails from a PR crisis firm contracted by Combs. The emails retrieved under subpoena detailed strategies to discredit witnesses, manipulate media coverage, and influence public opinion through coordinated bot networks. One message read, "Schedule decoy stories, plant social rumors, pay for distractions. Jane Doe is a priority to neutralize." In the gallery, whispers turned to stunned silence. Even Garagos momentarily looked rattled. Patel continued with a statement from an ex-staffer from Combs Global, now living under federal protection. In her video deposition, her face blurred and voice modulated, she recounted, "We were given code names for key people. Venus was Jane. Every mention came with a directive: suppress, surveil, and if needed, remove." Next came the testimony of a whistleblower from the NYPD's Digital Crimes Unit. The officer revealed that one of the department's analysts had attempted to delete Combs-related files in exchange for cryptocurrency payments. The whistleblower caught it in time and had the data mirrored. That mirrored evidence now sat on a drive Patel held in his hand. "The defense will tell you this is circumstantial," Patel said, locking eyes with the jury. "But what you're seeing is not chaos. It's design." Then came the bombshell. A second impersonator had been identified, this one attempting to approach a junior prosecutor in Patel's office just 2 days ago. Patel revealed that the imposter was detained after a sting operation posing as a paralegal. The ruse was discovered when the prosecutor asked about a fictitious file, and the impersonator played along. The prosecution introduced footage of the sting. The jury watched as the imposter was caught on hidden camera, trying to swap a drive from the office's secure archive. He had carried forged credentials, a duplicate access card, and a silenced phone set to transmit only. This, Patel said, is how desperate they are to bury the truth. When Jane returned to the stand, she appeared calm, resolute. She began reading excerpts from a handwritten journal she had kept during her time with Combs' entries never submitted before. March 8th, she read. He said, "You're mine until I say otherwise." I laughed, but he didn't. That night I found a lock installed on my bedroom door, from the outside. Garagos rose to object, but was overruled. She is the one who lived this, the judge said. She will be heard. Jane's entries painted a haunting portrait of manipulation, fear, and emotional captivity. She described her isolation from friends, being forced to sign blank checks, and being monitored through phone tracking apps she never installed. At one point, Patel asked, "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" Jane answered, "Because I thought no one would believe me, until I saw others coming forward. Then I realized my silence was helping him." Later in the day, an encrypted voice message sent to a former Combs employee surfaced. The message was traced to a number once used by Combs' head of security. Two problems left: the girl and the Fed. We handle the girl quietly, the feed more complicated. The courtroom froze. It was the first explicit acknowledgement of intent to target Jane and Cash Patel himself. Garagos objected to its admissibility. Patel, without missing a beat, produced the warrant, authorizing the retrieval and verification of the message. "I don't play fast and loose," he said, "unlike my counterpart." As the judge reviewed the document, the jury looked visibly shaken. The day ended with a powerful visual, a slideshow showing overlapping maps. Jane's movements, surveillance logs, bank withdrawals, and leaked internal memos. Everything aligned. A web of power, secrecy, and exploitation with Sean Combs at the center. Outside, the protesters grew louder. News anchors called it the unraveling of an empire. Cash Patel, packing his briefcase, turned to his assistant and said quietly, "We're past the point of no return." The sixth day of the trial dawned under a blanket of low-hanging clouds, as if the sky itself mirrored the gravity of what was about to unfold. By now, the nation was transfixed. Across networks and social media, hashtags related to the trial dominated discourse. The stakes were higher than ever, and so was the danger. Security at the courthouse reached unprecedented levels. Sniffer dogs patrolled the perimeter, and the press were kept at a significant distance. Inside, federal agents flanked Cash Patel as he entered, his expression more grim than determined. Rumors had circulated that there was an active threat against him, and now, for the first time, Patel acknowledged it. "Threats come with the truth," he told the courtroom. "I welcome them as proof we're close." The judge called for order as the morning session began. First, Patel submitted a fresh declaration to the court, an internal memorandum leaked from an intelligence contact within the Department of Justice. Though heavily redacted, it confirmed an active investigation into systemic interference from within law enforcement ranks. This court must consider the possibility, Patel stated, that someone inside the NYPD or even the federal system provided intelligence to Mr. Combs' associates. Next, a subpoenaed voice analysis expert testified about a call traced to Diddy's legal aid, which matched a previously anonymous threat left on Jane's burner phone. The expert, under oath, declared a 97% match with the aide's known recordings. Then came Jane's former therapist, who broke professional silence under a judicial exception. She spoke not of Jane's traumas alone, but of a coded language Jane had adopted just to describe her days without fear of being overheard. She'd refer to herself as the echo, the therapist said, because she felt like a shadow of her former self. Something repeated but never original. The weight of Jane's emotional testimony returned in full force. The jury leaned forward, visibly shaken. At noon, the prosecution called an unexpected witness, an ex-bodyguard from Combs' Miami residence. Appearing remotely due to security concerns, he revealed a night in 2022 when Combs reportedly lost control after hearing about Jane's potential meeting with journalists. According to the bodyguard, he smashed his phone, screamed she was a traitor, then ordered 2 men to track every step she takes. I quit the next morning. The court fell into an eerie silence. After a brief recess, Patel rose with what he called the final prelude to judgment. A multimedia presentation began heat maps of Jane's travels overlapping with unmarked surveillance vehicles, screenshots of wire transfers from a Combs shell company to private investigators, timeline footage from airport CCTV showing a known fixer tailing Jane during her visit to D.C. One clip showed the man in a lobby cafe just minutes after Jane left. He appeared to text, then immediately received a call. The call's recipient traced back to a burner linked to one of Combs' registered vehicles. Finally, Patel submitted a letter Jane had written to herself, never meant to be seen. It had been discovered in a book during a sweep of her old apartment. He read it aloud. "I'm not afraid of the dark anymore. Not because it's gone, but because I've learned to walk through it with my eyes open." The court was still. No objections came, not from Garagos, not even from Combs. Patel turned to the jury and closed his folder. "Tomorrow we will present our closing arguments. But tonight remember what you've heard. This isn't fiction. This isn't a scandal. This is the system screaming for repair." Outside, the protest had turned into a full rally. The people had chosen a side. Now the court had to.